Hi folks, and welcome back to Old Rusty, and this is part 11. And yes, I know it's been a while since I posted some videos on Old Rusty, but I've been busy with building the inner sills, and you can see the two here and the cross member, and then some more work inside the cabin, as you might have seen in the previous episodes. And now it's time to put the cabin back onto the chassis and weld in all the pieces, because you can't really weld in all these cross members and the inner sills when the cabin is off the chassis. It's too much of a risk that the fitting holes won't fit. So I really want to do it on the chassis, and then we'll weld it all together, and then the cabin should have its strength back where it's supposed to have its strength. So I'm going to hoist it up, and I'm going to push it over to the other side where I have my pulley. I will lift up the cabin, and then I will drive under the chassis of the truck, and then I will lower down the cabin on it and make sure that it fits with the front brackets onto the chassis, and then we should be all good to go. And I have my little helper here, Fleur, my dog. She's always with me, so you might see her in one or another video. Right, Fleur? All right, so let's get on with it. So the cabin is almost underneath the pulley. So now I'm going to put some lifting belts up and over the cabin so I can lift it up, and then we'll see how it goes. I've got the cabin hooked up to the pulley, so let's see if we can get it going. As they say, high and dry. Oh, I'm going to lift a bit more because I have to get the truck underneath. There we go. That should be good enough. All right, so let me get the chassis. We'll roll it underneath, and then we're going to lower it down. Okay, so now it's going to be a matter of pushing the truck underneath the cabin. So let's see. Yep. Almost. Yep. That's looking good. So after all the locomotion we had with the cabin dropping down onto the chassis when one of the bolts of the pulley broke, I've got the cabin finally back down onto the chassis. The good thing is, guys, the pulley that I have today is still the old one, but I've got a new one. Here it is, the brand new pulley. Nothing was damaged. Just a small dent on the bulkhead on the left hand side, but this was nothing. I didn't get injured, so we got quite lucky. So the first thing we're now going to do is to bolt down the cabin onto the chassis, and I'll start from the front. And in the front, inside, we have these brackets, and this is the old brackets. When I lifted the cabin off the chassis, I noticed that underneath the front bracket there were wooden spacers like this, and this is the one from the left and that's the one from the right. It's a bit worn, and those wooden spacers were real oak. and they just go underneath the bracket. And this is the bracket that holds the cabin onto the chassis. Here is the bulkhead normally, and the chassis would be over here. Now I'm going to rebuild those, and I already kind of pre-cut some real old oak. This old oak is about 200 years old. It comes from the farm, from an old beam. So next is to cut them to length. And once that's done, I'll align the cabin in the back. I will pull up the cabin a bit in the back so I can level it out properly. We'll put the sills up left and right. Those are the inner sills that we've built. And then we start welding things in place once we've got everything aligned. So let's put the oak spacer underneath the bracket and see if we can line it all up. Might be a little bit tricky. Okay. I'll just put a bolt up for now, so we can hold it in place. So finally we've got the bracket in place. It took a little bit of fiddling as always, so let's walk it down. So now it's time to mount the inner sill on the right hand side, and then we do the other side. The sill is laying over there, and it's resting on these brackets here, which are bolted down to the chassis. There's one more all the way at the end, and I'll show you that in a minute. So now I have to put the sill on there and then bolt it down, and I'll do the other side. And then finally we'll weld it up. But first we need to put the sills up. All right, so let's try to get the sill in. That's where the bolts are supposed to go, and I'm going to put an oak spacer first. So there we go. It's always a little bit of fiddling, and the bolt can go in. The two inner sills are now positioned. This is the one on the left, the other one is the one on the right. I'm just going to bolt them down, and then we'll do the rear cross member. And with a little bit of luck, everything will fit just fine, and we can start welding it together. Yeah, that all looks pretty good. Let me close the door and have a look. All right, so far we've put in the inner sills on the left and on the right. We bolted down the front brackets of the cabin onto the chassis, and now I can put in the cross member in the back of the cabin where the back panel is. That will give its final strength. You see some holes in here. That's where I'm going to do spot welds. It's going to be a little bit hard to show you that on how I'm putting it in, because there isn't a lot of space, and I don't even think I'm going to get my camera in it, but let's see anyhow what I can show you. So let's start doing that. So here we go. So that's in place. However, I have to undo the bolts that I put in before on the inner sills, because they have to go through this cross member. So let's do that. So the cross member is in place. We've got the sills done. So now I'm going to spot weld the cross member, and then we weld the remaining parts, and then the cabin is finished, and we can lift it off again, and then we can continue working on the outer sills. This is the front end of the inner sill on the right hand side. We bolted it down to the bracket on the chassis, This is the bracket we built, which is fixed to the bulkhead and which is also bolted down with the oak spacer. We still have to do a weld over here, but that's something for later on tonight. That's it, fellows, for part 11. We mounted the inner sills on the left and on the right. We mounted the cabin onto the chassis. We bolted it all down. We made some oak spacers, and we've put in the cross member in the rear of the cabin. And we did a few spot welds already on that one. So the rest is now all welding it all up together. It's a lot of welding work. I'm not going to bother you with that one. But in part 12, you will see me lifting up the cabin again, and then I will start to work on the outer sills. I hope you enjoyed it, and I had a bit of a setback on this video because the cabin dropped down, as you might remember. But at the end, it all turned out okay. There is nothing that cannot be done. Thank you for viewing, and I'll see you in part 12, which is coming very soon.